Welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk with attorneys about their lives and careers. Today, we welcome attorney Charles Woodson to the podcast. Mr. Woodson has experience in both civil and criminal trial advocacy and has practiced in state and federal courts. He is a member of the Alameda County Bar Association's Court-Appointed Attorneys Program for indigent clients. He has numerous professional memberships. Mr. Woodson's experience also includes transactional work and appellate advocacy. Charles Woodson, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Thank you, Louis. It's great to be here.
Great to see you. I see you in court, not as much as I used to, because I don't think we're seeing anybody in court quite as much as we used to. But it is nice to see you outside of court. Where are you talking to us from right now?
I'm talking to you from my office in Oakland on Washington Street, right next to Wiley Manual Courthouse.
What sort of practice do you have? How do you describe it?
I describe it as it's a solo practice by myself. I don't have anybody else helping me. It's just a one-man show. Well, I take that back. That's not entirely true. I do have help. And it's primarily focused on criminal defense, state and federal work.
When you say you have help, what sort of staff do you have or team do you have?
I work with another lawyer that kind of like looks over pleadings, just kind of like edits them, cuts them down, gives me feedback, advice on what I need to do. Then I have somebody that helps me with billing, making sure that I get my monthly bills in on time because, after all, this is a business. So those are the two primary functions with like help.
Yeah, I think it's really important for attorneys to have somebody else to kind of bounce things off of and also to have some help dealing with the business side of the practice. We're not trained that way.
No. I did. If I had known this was a business, I don't know that I would have gone in to this type of practice, to be honest with you. The business is the worst part.
Everybody seems to say that. Where are you from originally?
So I was born in San Francisco, and I grew up in San Francisco, Oakland, but I really spent the majority of my childhood in Sonoma County.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Rancho Cotati High School in Rohnert Park.
That is Sonoma County.
It's very Sonoma County.
Well, what was that like? What was that experience like living in Sonoma County?
Sonoma County has a lot of very, very great things. A lot of outdoors, nature, the river. But there's also just drawbacks in terms of, I guess, diversity. I experienced a lot of racism in high school. I got death threats, and it wasn't fun.
So when you graduated out of Rohnert Park and you got out of that nasty situation, where did you go to college?
So I went to Cal.
How was that experience being in Berkeley?
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the campus, the environment, just the whole package. It's pretty cool to you're just walking to class and you see a Nobel laureate, or you see you run into just random people like Johnny Mosley, he was in the Olympics, and you're just this is an amazing experience.
And I suspect you felt a lot safer there.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about going to class. I didn't have to worry about my property getting damaged, my car getting vandalized. I didn't even have a car at campus. It was a really nice and nurturing experience.
Now, when you graduated from college, at some point you went to law school. Did you take any time off, or did you just go straight through to law school?
Well, I had taken my time going through undergrad. I graduated in December. I traveled through Europe until after I graduated, and then I went to law school in August.
What was your trip to Europe like?
Trip to Europe was pretty amazing because it was kind of like a tour of a lot of European capitals, and so it was really eye-opening in a lot of ways, and it was just a really fun time to just see another continent. And
What'd you think of it?
it's beautiful in a lot of ways, and it's eye-opening. And I also just met a lot of like interesting people. When I was in Berlin, I met somebody that was in my hostel. He was literally doing his bachelor's math at the same time in some type of astrophysics.
Wow.
And I asked him, "What are you doing here in Berlin?" And he was like, "I'm here for a conference." And so it was like meetings with people like that. You're just like, this is just incredible. Like there's so much going on in the world.
So you got back from Europe and you
And
went to
what's
law school. Where'd you go?
so it's now called Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. When I enrolled, it was just Arizona State College of Law in Tempe.
And what did you think of going to school there? I mean, you've gone from Sonoma County to San Francisco to Cal Berkeley, and now after a brief trip to Europe, you're in Arizona. Very, very different place than any of the other places you've
Yeah,
been.
it was a lot hotter. I mean, you go from 68 degrees in San Francisco in August to 110 in Tempe in August. September, it's like 110, 112. It's warm. So the climate and it took me a while. It took me a while to settle in.
Well, speaking of aggressive, what did you think of law school when you got started?
I was surprised, to be honest with you. I was very surprised by how the students, because the students at Arizona State were different than the students at Cal, where the nature at Cal is kind of like everybody's very, very curious and about learning the law, and there's less functionality. Whereas in law school, it was very much a matter of a means to an end in terms of like whether it's networking, your grades, who you were friends with, internships, externships. It was far more driven than I was expecting.
Thinking back on your life, when was it that you first decided that you were a lawyer, that you wanted to be a lawyer? And when did you decide to apply to law school?
So I guess I'll answer that in two parts. The first part is I first really gave to law school a thought was in high school when I was a sophomore, and we were having to do some type of testing, or I don't know what it is, and along with a report about that profession. So I chose, and I was like, oh, I want to be an international transactional lawyer. And the teacher suggested that I try something like becoming a landscape architect, because being a gardener was probably more in line. And so I did not do a report on becoming an international lawyer. It was on being a gardener. And so that kind of, I guess, planted the seed for me to like, okay, fine, I'm going to go and do it anyway. When I decided to apply to law school was sometime when I was at Cal.
What did your friends and family say when you said, hey, I want to go to law school and I'm applying and I want to be a lawyer?
Everybody was pretty supportive. They were pretty supportive. And, I think in one way they like the one lawyer that I was close with, a family friend, basically didn't tell me that law school was not as friendly and supportive in a lot of ways as undergraduate, because she didn't want to dissuade me from actually pursuing the practice. I think overall people were my mom was very, very excited. So yeah, there wasn't any real second guessing it. It was all support.
So what was your first legal job out of law school?
My first legal job. So this is in 2008. The economy had crashed. Nobody could get a job anywhere. So I was a legal assistant at a law firm in Berkeley for a civil plaintiff side personal injury attorney. And I did that for about 6 months.
And at some point you went and worked for the Public Defender's office
I
in,
did.
was it Marin County?
And I was making money doing the personal injury stuff as a legal assistant. And then my school had given me a little bit of money to do a postgraduate fellowship at the Marin County Public Defender's office. And so I also spent about 6 months there. And the reason why was because in law school, I had done the public defender clinic in Maricopa County, and I really enjoyed it.
What was it about doing criminal defense that you found so interesting?
I think getting to advocate for the little guy, or to basically try to give people some equality.
Can you talk a little bit about your path from working at the personal injury firm and doing some work at Marin County Public Defender to opening your own practice and bringing us up to date as to what you're doing now? Can you just kind of walk us through that a little bit?
There are lots of little steps. So I had joined the San Francisco Lawyers Club's Inns of Court, and so I started there. And my wife also is a lawyer, and she went to Arizona State. So the two of us went there to like meet people and greet people. And so just to kind of give a baseline of networking, she had also done the public defender clinic in Maricopa County, but she ended up landing in San Francisco District Attorney's office, and she was second chair on a very high profile case, because she was, at the conclusion of the case, the defense attorney said, "Hey, you told me you wanted to work, you've done the public defender's clinic in Maricopa County. You want to come over here and work with me?" And she said, "Sure." And so it was kind of at that point that my fellowship in Marin County, the PI lawyer in Marin County. And so I just kind of would hang around her new office, because it was, the lawyer was real welcoming, and he was just super supportive. And his law partner ended up introducing me to some practitioners here in Alameda County to do some contract work for like appearances, things of that nature. And then after I had been around for a little while, I applied to the Alameda County Bar Association's court-appointed panel. Back then, I want to say it was Sue Kleebauer who headed up the panel. And so I was doing just misdemeanors, like class 4, class 5, basically, and including misdemeanor appeals. And so I did that for until about 2012, 2013. My wife had gotten a job offer to do, because she's far better lawyer than I am, far smarter than I am, far more versatile. And she had gotten an offer to do intellectual property and patent litigation, because she's got a hard science degree from undergrad. And so we moved to San Diego. And while I was down there trying to find work, it was really, really hard. The legal market in San Diego is very different than it is up here. I was looking around and I saw they had this postgraduate, or they had this LLM fellowship at Cal Western. All of the professors were from the Federal Defender's Office in San Diego, which is like the national training office that consistently produces some of the best litigators in the country. Like for a long time, Judy Clark headed up that office. And so I figured, well, a semester of classwork to learn the federal sentencing guidelines, to learn about, defending a federal case and how different it is from state court. So I went ahead and did it. And then after that had finished up, my wife and I had our son in 2014 or 2013, excuse me. So in 2014, I had finished up. She wasn't really liking the practice, the intellectual property trademark. So we moved back up here. I was able to get onto the federal panel. And then I was also able to get back onto the Alameda County Bar Association's panel. Paul Wolf, actually, had office space open. And so because I had known a couple of the lawyers that were in there, I set up shop in Paul's office, and it just kind of, the path has led me to where I'm at now. Paul's retired, and I'm still going strong, but like, I'm still very close with other lawyers that were in there, like Alana Cooper Smith and Eric Babcock, Adam Pinella. I think Sierra's over there now, Sierra Dugan.
Yeah. Yeah, I've interviewed her for the podcast. So what do you like about practicing law? I mean, you've been doing it for a while. You obviously have the ability to do other things if you chose to, but you've chosen to stay being a lawyer.
As a defense attorney, even if I'm able to, the motion is denied or whatever is denied or not granted, I know that I've made an impression on my client, that they know that, I'm fighting for them, and that I've made an impression on the court where, yes, they granted the motion, but, later that evening when they're thinking about their day, they're going to remember, they granted their motion, they denied my motion. And, if that doesn't sit well with them, then I did my job, because their denial actually, they're like, well, maybe I was wrong. I'm like, well, then I did my job. Then I had an impact. And maybe the next time this issue comes before them, that may actually benefit the next person that's coming through the door.
If a young person were coming out of college and thinking about a career, would you recommend the law?
I mean, the law is it's so wide and so diverse. Like, there's so many avenues and there's so many things that you can do in the law, or because you went to law school. Like, for example, some of my classmates are now sports agents. Others are in real estate or in banking, finance. I think that's a personal question. If they're interested in it, they should explore it.
How has the business of practicing law gone for you? And can you just kind of talk about that a little bit? I mean, with an understanding that's a rough part for most of us.
For the business aspect, I mean, it starts, well, how are you going to actually set up your practice? Are you going to be independent? Are you just going to set up a corporation or a limited liability practice, and then going and getting an actual business bank account, registering with whatever city you're in, getting malpractice insurance, things of that nature. These are all the things that you need. You're the foundation of your practice. Without it, you can't really, you're not really doing it. You're going to hurt yourself. And then after that, there's that, how much money are you going to spend on advertising? What's your overhead? I think some people call it like a net. What's your net every month that you need to make in order to just keep the lights on? That, depending on how your practice is, advertising could run you in the tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not very business minded. I'm more service minded. And so, okay, well, I'll quote you X number of dollars. And they're like, oh, well, we want to do a payment plan. Well, nobody told you you're going to actually have to follow up. And like, where's my, you haven't made your payment this month. What's going on? What can we do to make the payment happen? Which is completely foreign to the practice of law.
Yeah, they don't teach us this in law school. Do you think the legal system is fair?
I think it's as fair as the operators that are in the system. I learned from Judge Gonzalez-Rogers that probably the most important thing is to act with integrity. Consistency and integrity are the cornerstone to our system of law.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit, Charles. What's your family life been like, and how has practicing law fit into that, and vice versa? The sort of work-life balance question.
So when I had my son and I was in San Diego, Robert Boyce asked me, "Are you sure you want to do this? You've got a son. You're going to miss a lot of things. This is a very demanding profession, and it is. It truly is. Long days, working 6 days, 7 days a week, taking calls last night, for example, I got a call at 10 p.m. I'm no longer, because it's business. And when the phone rings, that's money. I got to take the call. I had to step away from doing bedtime. I don't like that aspect of it. I would hope to kind of roll that back at some point. But given the age of my kids, I need to make sure that I'm making enough money so that we have a roof over our head, so that they've got, there's food in the kitchen and they've got clean clothes and so on and so forth, insurance. I would hope that it wouldn't have encroached on my life like it has. That's the practice of law, but law is a very demanding mistress.
What sort of recreational pursuits do you have? What sort of things do you do to kind of get your mind off of the practice of law when you're not working?
I spend time with my kids, and that could be like watching a movie or trying to play video games. And I've been trying to get better about this, is like going out and doing like family exercise together. Like for Thanksgiving, for example, like for the last 3 years, we run the turkey trot around Lake Marin on Thanksgiving Day.
What sort of things keep you up at night?
Reviewing Discovery, needing to review body-worn camera footage, getting billing out, all of those. Exercise, my health. Yeah, the health is a big one too, because I want to be around in 20 years.
Let's say you came into some real money. Let's say several $1 billion, $3 or $4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
Probably add staff to my firm. I would that would allow me to like spend more quality time with my family rather than doing ministerial stuff. Take vacation. I think fundamentally that's probably what I would do.
Let's say you had a magic wand. There was one thing that you could change in the world, the legal world or otherwise. What would that be?
I would really like all of the violence and the hatred to stop, because it's just heartbreaking. I think I'd like people generally to be a lot more friendly and compassionate about other people, even people that they don't know.
Let's say you had a Super Bowl ad. Someone gave you 60 seconds on the Super Bowl to say anything that you wanted. What would you like to say to a really big audience?
You could be as cliche as you want, like give love a chance, or, like, for example, in the United States, it's like, all right, we're one nation. Like, let's act like that rather than acting like we're, several different countries within this country.
Charles, if someone wants to contact you to have you represent them, or an attorney wanted to talk to you about some aspect of your practice, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is to Google me, but you have to make sure to put attorney in Oakland after Charles Woodson, because there was a football player who played for the Raiders that is a little famous. And so what will happen is if you just put Charles Woodson in Oakland, you won't find me.
Well, what's that like, having the same name as a very famous football player?
The blessing is that people don't forget my name, because my name is synonymous with a very famous person. And the curse is just that, like, obviously I'm not Charles Woodson. I don't have Charles Woodson money. I don't have a winery. So it's kind of a joke.
But if someone wants to find you, Charles Woodson, you put in Charles Woodson, attorney, Oakland, and
That's
your
correct.
name will come up on Google. Charles, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't discussed? Anything at all that you wanted to bring up?
There was one thing, maybe two. The first thing I wanted to know was whether you were in the DA's office when Tony Serra was in the DA's office.
The answer to that is no. Tony Serra was in the DA's office well before I was, but our supervisor in the DA's office was the same person who was Buzz DeVega.
And what is your most memorable trial?
Well, my most memorable trial was a trial that I lost, which had to do with it was a sex offense, and I was offered no time by Judge Gold, and my client absolutely refused to take it. And we went to trial in front of Judge Lee in Alameda County Superior Court. After trying that case for 6 weeks, the jury went out, had lunch, came back, convicted my client of everything, and Judge Lee ultimately gave my client 18 years in state prison. I learned a lot from the experience because I was given a very, very reasonable offer that my client clearly should have taken, and I knew he should have taken it. And because I knew he should have taken it, I should not have taken that case to trial. That's what I learned from that situation. I should have said, no, here's your trial fee back. I can't in good conscience keep going with this because I've done everything that I can in your case and gotten you a disposition that you clearly ought to take. So that's my most memorable trial.
I mean, those are really wise words. You know, it's learning restraint.
You know, maybe let me just follow up on that and ask you, like, how do you deal with it emotionally when a client gets convicted, gets a prison sentence, and it's, you know, it doesn't really matter whether they're innocent or they're guilty. You always develop a certain relationship with clients, and you tend to see them as human beings, even if they have done something that is maybe really bad and certainly illegal. I don't know. I've always had a hard time dealing with people who end up going to prison,
yeah.
You know, for serious periods of time. How do you deal with that?
Well, what I've learned was what not to do, which was like to lament it with alcohol. And that was from watching other lawyers trying very heavy cases when I first started. Was the what not to do, which was kind of self-deprecating alcohol, kind of talking about it, continuing to talk about the case and the trial even after it happened, especially with other practitioners that can kind of they can sympathize and empathize with you about the trial and the emotions that are attached to it and the feelings of whether it's like of regret, mistakes, that it's your fault. Talking about it has been probably the biggest thing that I've taken away from it.
And talking about it, do you think is good or bad?
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You have to talk about it. You have to share it. It helps you process it, because if you just hold on to it and you bottle it up or whatever, it eats at you. It ends up festering, and it doesn't, and it's something that actually needs to run its course, just like your client's sentence.
Charles Woodson, thank you so much for joining me today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast.
See you in court.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and follow the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks to my guests, and to Joel Katz for music, Brian Matheson for technical support, Paul Roberts for social media, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman. I'm having a hard time hearing you right now. Oh, that sounds better. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Your picture's disappeared, but I can hear you okay.
Yeah, it's sorry about that.
Don't worry about it. It'll all get fixed in the edit. It's not a problem.